Hi everyone and welcome to this video where I'll share you my tips on how you can save when traveling. A lot of you requested this video to me, so I'm finally sharing my tips on how you can maximize on your travels while minimizing on your costs. A couple of years ago I went to Barcelona, stayed for 4 days and only paid 58 euros for my flight and accommodation. In 2015, during my first month in New York, I only paid for 2 nights. And in 2016 I traveled to Paris and only paid 30 euros return. How? Continue to watch and I will share you my tips. I always try to travel as much as I can, so I'm always on the lookout for budget deals and ways for me to minimize my costs so I can continue to travel. A lot of times I also travel solo, and if you travel solo before, you know it's not always cheaper if you travel by yourself. But nonetheless, there are still more ways for you to travel more often, and I will share you how. Almost everything I do when it comes to traveling is online, whether it's looking for my destination, booking the flight or booking the accommodation. That's why for this video I teamed up with bunq, Bank of the Free, a full mobile bank that allows you to save up to 3% during your holidays thanks to their zero FX feature. Normal banks, they charge you extra when you pay abroad, but they don't. Another feature that I absolutely love is the fact that you can create up to 25 different accounts. So when I'm traveling, I can create a separate account for my destination, so everything is paid through that separate account with a separate number. So what are other ways that you can save while traveling? Here are a few more tips. One is timing. A few years ago I met an American who said he always travels in January because January is the cheapest month to travel. And think of it, because it makes sense. In December is like one of the most expensive months of the year where you go for Christmas, all the New Year's Eve, etc. So in January a lot of people don't travel. So if you look well, you will see that a lot of airlines have really cheap budget flights, and also a lot of hotels are more free, so therefore the prices are much lower. Season-wise, it's not ideal for all the destinations, but in January, like a lot of South American countries are in the summer, so you can look for those destinations and book your flight. So save on Christmas and New Year's Eve and travel in January. Another way that has allowed me to travel a lot more on a budget is the platform Couchsurfing. For those who don't know, on Couchsurfing, that's a platform where locals can connect with travelers, but also offer their accommodation for them to stay for free. So the first time I traveled and used Couchsurfing was probably in 2010, and then I traveled to Venice and stayed for 1 week. One of the things I would do recommend if you're using it for the first time is check the reviews. If you're a woman staying with a man, make sure that he has reviews both from men and from women, and make sure there are a lot of reviews so you can be sure with who you're staying. A lot of people, I was surprised that they were offering their home, but they do it because they really like to connect with other people, they like to learn about different cultures, meeting people from everywhere, and they have the extra space. So therefore they're giving this space to other people to stay. And for me, it allowed me to meet so many cool locals, a lot of expats as well, but then also hear from the insider stories. When I was in Venice, for example, my host, at some point he texted me saying like, oh, you have to come to the Piazza San Marco because there's like this water all over and it only happens in the winter. So I went there and took pictures, and it was this beautiful reflection of the cathedral or church, I'm not sure. And that's something that I would not have been able to see if I wasn't staying with a couchsurfer. I also stayed with couchsurfer host in London twice, and I also stayed with couchsurfers in New York. That's also one of the ways that allowed me to stay for almost a whole month for free in New York, because I already knew couchsurfers, but through the couchsurfers I also managed to stay at different places and in different boroughs, because I feel like I stayed almost everywhere in New York. You might look at this and think like, oh, couchsurfing is not for me because I'm older or I have a family or whatever, but I beg to differ. One of my old colleagues, she was older, and I was telling her about my experience with couchsurfing, so she wasn't sure if she should do it. But she managed to find people her age on Couchsurfing and stayed with a teacher somewhere in California, I'm not sure where it was. And she absolutely loved it because it allowed her to connect with people her age, but it's also like a bit of a social function because you don't get that type of interaction when you're staying at a hotel. There are also families that are renting on Couchsurfing or offering their space, so you can go there with your kids. And I also have a friend who went to Lebanon and she stayed at a villa in Lebanon, and it was like, oh, you have to give me this contact because if I go there I would love to stay there. And it was all for free. Discount codes. If you go to my description box, you'll also find a link for booking.com that allows you to book with $25 discount. A lot of times when you know more people, you get to hear from the insider things, and that's one of the cool things that I find out. Like, the more you look, the more treasures you will find. So on booking.com, the good thing is that you can also look on the website, you can filter by price, location, many different things. There are hostels, there are apartments, and there are hotels. And lately that has been my platform of choice when it comes to accommodation. So if you're looking to book a specific location or even boutique design hotels, go to the website and use my link below if you want to use the $25 discount. When you're traveling, which bank account you use also makes a really big difference. With bunq, you can pay abroad without the extra fees thanks to their zero FX feature. One of the cool things that I love about this bank is that you can try 1 month for free, so it's like Netflix. You can start for free and then see if you like it or not. And then what I also love is that you can create up to 25 different accounts. So let's say that you're traveling with your partner to France. You can create a separate account for this trip to France and then budget up front. Okay, we want to spend that much. Because you know, if you have it on the same account, at some point you will surpass your budget and then it will be like, oh no, we spent too much. If you're traveling solo, you can also create this for separate account for different destinations or for different passions. So let's say one of the things is for the food abroad, you can create a separate account for that. If you want one for travel in general, you can also create a separate account for that. That makes it much easier to budget and also to keep an overview of all the calls that you're making. One of the things I also check a lot are travel discount websites. There are several that I'm getting a newsletter by, such as, let me see, there's Jack's Flight Club, there's ticketspy.nl, there's flyfree.com, Groupon, ticket auctions, but I also check the American website Elite Daily, because depending on where you're based, I'm based in the Netherlands, but if you're watching this and you're based in the United States, then it's different. So if you look American website, they will give you budget travel deals from the States, and if you're in Europe, it's easier to check from the people who are based in Europe where they check for their websites. I will list all those websites down below so you can refer to them afterwards, and make sure you subscribe to the newsletter because I don't have time to go there every day, but I get it in my inbox, and usually they put the flight deal in the subscription or in the subject so I can see based on that whether it's interesting or not. And usually they send it about once a day or every 2 days so that I can screen and see if there's anything interesting. Usually it's for a specific time limit and also from specific airports, so you have to check which one is valid for you, but it doesn't hurt to check from time to time. I'm also subscribed to newsletters from airlines such as Ryanair and KLM. Ryanair is a budget airline in Europe that has super cheap budget deals from so often. And a lot of times I get their newsletter and I will check, and I think when I travel, especially when I want to keep my costs on the low, I travel with them the most. If they travel to my destination of choice, of course. I managed to travel to London for 30 euros return. I also went to Barcelona at the time. I paid 58 euros. I think I paid 32 euros for the flight ticket return. And also went to Italy with them. A lot of times I will travel with with Ryanair. Coming from a different continent and you're coming to Europe, I would check beforehand. So let's say that your starting point is Holland. Then I would go on the Ryanair website, check where we're going next and see what the prices are. Do note that these really cheap prices are usually in off-season, not during high season. So in high season it will be more expensive, but it's still not at the same level as other airlines. It's still worth to check if it's cheaper for you or not. KLM has KLM World deals, so from time to time they have really cheap budget deals for far destinations. I don't know exactly out of the top of my mind, but if you subscribe to the newsletter, then you will see when they have it. And from time to time, based on the world deals, they also do competitions where you're able to win a contest and fly for free. If you prefer to drive to your destination, I would recommend to look at Bla Bla Car. So Bla Bla Car, it's a website where people who drive to a specific destination can offer the seats that they have in their car, so they can earn some of the money or all of the money that they pay in gas when they go there. And if you're going, for example, to Berlin, you can check if anybody's driving up there, and then you can save so much more than if you would go by bus or by train. One time I was checking to go to Berlin and I saw a single ride for only 9 euros, which is super cheap because like you cannot even tip that when you go by bus or by train. You can also check, for example, if you're driving and you don't want to have somebody in the car who talks, you can also say what your preferences are. So you want a talker or non-talker. Like it's easy for you to customize and tailor-made it to your own experience and what fits you best. Again, check the reviews from the people driving, but also from the passengers, because like nowadays, like with the reviews, it's so easy to check if somebody is legit or not, or if it would be a good fit for your ride. Another tip is to take the bus. So the time that I went to Paris and only paid 30 euros return, I went with WeBus. So with WeBus, I went somewhere in August, which is already high season, and I only paid 30 euros return. There are different bus companies here in Europe or in Holland that are WeBus, but also Flixbus, that you can find like really cheap budget travel deals. And I personally prefer WeBus because like the Wi-Fi connection was good, so you also have Wi-Fi on board, you have the toilet on board, and it's like really comfortable. What I prefer with WeBus is that you already get a seat, so you don't have to fight for your place, and that's different with Flixbus because there is like first come first serve basis. WeBus has different destinations, so it's easy for you to travel to different locations, and you do have to have more time when you go by bus. So when I went there, I think it took up to 6 hours. So by train, it would be only 3 hours. If you want to save the money, then it's worth investing it in a bus trip. And then you can vary it afterwards with train tickets or whatever. And in the States, I know there are also other companies that are not as cheap as the ones here in Europe, but still you manage to go to specific locations where the plane doesn't go, and it's also cheaper. So when I went from New York to Pawtucket to visit my family, I took the Peter Pan bus, and I think I remember they also had Wi-Fi on board, and it was like a really easy ride. So it took me to my end destination, and then my family came to pick me up. So also look into Peter Pan bus, and there are probably other bus companies for you to travel more often. So when you're gonna book a flight, make sure you do a research online. On Google Flight, you can compare the different prices, and then you can do so. Take your time to do it. You don't have to book immediately because sometimes it can vary no matter like the longer you wait. Sometimes it becomes more expensive, sometimes it becomes cheaper. You can also check on Skyscanner, and on Skyscanner it allows you to set an alert. So every time the price changes, you will get an email saying like, hey, the price changed. So you can follow it, the trend, to see what's worth or not. Another great tip is to fly from alternative airports. So like I mentioned before, a lot of times I travel with Ryanair and they fly from Eindhoven. So in Holland there are different airports, and the main one is Schiphol Airport. But there are a lot of alternative airports as well, such as Eindhoven, where Ryanair flies from, but also Wizz Air, Transavia. Then there's also Rotterdam Airport, where Transavia flies from. So depending on where you're going, it's worth the investment to travel from a different airport. Do note that not all alternative airports are easily accessible with public transportation, because I always take the public transportation to go there. Eindhoven here in Holland is really accessible. They have really good public transportation connections, so there I never have an issue unless the flight is really early, which I had one time. I had a flight at 8, so I had to stay a night before with an Airbnb so I can go up the next morning, because that early they don't have trains or buses that go to the airport. They do to Schiphol, however, there's always a connection there. But from Eindhoven it's not the case. Visit 2 destinations for the price of 1. Many years ago I saw that Iceland Air offers this free stopover. So when you're traveling from Europe to the States or Canada or vice versa, you get a free stopover in Iceland. And it's like from 1 up to 7 days. Normally with other airlines, like now more and more are starting to change this, but normally when you have a layover, then you have to pay more if you wanted to stay more days. Not a few hours, but if you want to stay more days. The cool thing with this feature is that you can do like 2 destinations, take your time on both locations, because then you can choose up from 1 to 7 days, and then you can see 2 different countries and then from 2 different continents, and get this wild all-round experience. I haven't done it yet, but it's definitely on my list, and I was thinking of combining Iceland with New York because I love going to New York, and therefore that would be like such a different experience to like relax at Iceland and then go to vibrant, buzzy New York for a different experience completely. One of the things I also did a few years ago, when I would travel to Brazil, I would do a stopover in Madrid for a few hours. So this wasn't included in the packaging of 2 destinations for 1, but because I had a few hours in between my 2 flights, I still have the time to go to Madrid and explore the city. At least I didn't really get to explore the city, but I took my time to visit the Bernabeu Stadium, which is the stadium of football club Real Madrid, and it was so awesome because I still felt like I got to experience the city for free because I had there a couple of hours to spend. Another great example of doing 2 destinations for 1 is combining Sevilla with Morocco. So 2 years ago I went to Sevilla and I absolutely love the city. If you didn't see my video yet, I will include the link in the description box. One of the tips that I got is that next time when I go, I should go to Sevilla, explore the Andalusia region, and then because Andalusia is so close to Morocco, you can take the boat and it takes 30 minutes up to 1 hour, and then you go to Tanger, which is in north of Morocco. Then you get to explore Morocco, and then you fly in on Sevilla, take the boat to Morocco, and then you fly back from Morocco. So you get 2 different countries, 2 different continents, and again you get 2 destinations for the price of 1. Only travel with a carry-on. A lot of airlines now add additional costs if you want to add more luggage, so traveling light is your best bet. That's one of the reasons that I focus so much on capsule wardrobes. A few items, like 10 items, you can create 28 different outfits, and it's easier because when you travel light, not only do you save on cost, but it's so much easier because it's stress-free. When you pick your outfits, it's light, breezy, and you can easily explore the city without having to carry so much luggage. Trust me, I did it so many times, and once you've done that error, you're not doing that again. So travel light to make it easier for you, but also to make it easier on your wallet. Use Airbnb. So the time I traveled to Barcelona and only paid 58 euros, I booked maybe 30 something for my flight with Ryanair, and then I found an accommodation for 25 euros a night in Barcelona. I went there with my friends, so it was easier to split the cost, and it was also at a time when Airbnb was just starting. So it was a great location with a great host, and we were able to really get the experience with the local because she was a Cuban student in Barcelona, and it allowed her to finance her studies but also to make a living there because she said it wasn't always easy for immigrants to get a job, etc. So it really gave me a really good feeling that I was, through my money and through my travel experience, to actually help a local get a better life. But this was probably in 2011 or 2012. Meanwhile, Airbnb has grown so much, and like this direct contact with the host is not as much as it used to be in the early days. What I still love is that you can actually zoom in on the location where you want to stay and also filter on price. But as of lately, I have been using more booking.com because I don't know, like Airbnb hasn't been what it used to be, so for me it's not as fun anymore because I'm missing the human contact aspect of it. If you want to visit many locations at once when you're staying in Europe, then I would recommend getting the Interrail Global Pass. The Interrail Global Pass is a train ticket that allows you to visit up to 31 countries in Europe during a certain amount of days. So depending on how long you're planning to use this train pass, then you pay more. The cool thing about this pass is that you get to travel to all these different destinations in your own tempo. So let's say you start in France and you want to stay there for a whole week, that's possible. If you only want to stay 2 days, that's also possible, because just take the train to your next destination and you're good to go. They have discounts for people up to 27 years old, so if you're younger than that, then make sure you check it. With this pass, you get to enter on different locations in Europe. I will leave the link in the description box so you can see for yourself. So depending on how long you're staying, you have to pay different prices. So if you're doing 3 days within a month, you pay 168 euros, so it starts at that price. If you do 5 days, then you're paying 217 euros, and the longer you're staying, the more you pay. But the cool thing is, like, if you would pay these destinations all separately, it would add up to so much more. So if you're planning to see as much as possible, then invest in this type of train experience, because not only do you get to see more for less, but in the train you also get to enjoy the landscape. And normally when you're in the bus you don't really get to see as much, and in the plane you see it from on top, but then this way you really get to see it as a local. And one last tip that I did, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to you, but I also wanted to share it because it was also one of the things I did to save my money, was hitchhiking. So when they say be careful what you ask for because you might get it. So in 2015 I really had this thing where I wanted to hitchhike. I have been trying to do this forever, and I like doing things that scare me because it gives me more confidence when I face my fear. So in 2015 I also read an article explaining like how you should do it, etc, etc. So I was planning to do it with a friend from Holland to Denmark. I never knew or thought that I would be hitchhiking in Mexico, but I did. So I started in Mexico City, and then first we went with the Bla Bla Car to Oaxaca, and then from Oaxaca we hitchhiked. I hitchhiked with two locals. We hitchhiked all the way up to Merida, but I have to say in the middle of my trip I had to say bye to my two hitchhiking colleagues, I don't know how you call it, and then I had to continue my hitchhiking experience with somebody else because they wanted to go to Chiapas and I really wanted to end up in Merida. So with this hitchhiking experience I got to see so much more of Mexico than most people when they visit the country for the first time. And I do have to say, because I speak Spanish, it was easier for me. I don't blend in because I still look like a foreigner everywhere I go. But knowing how to speak the language was much easier for my experience. I also traveled light because I also only had my backpack. So make sure when you want to see more that you're light, that way it's easier for you to move around. And I got to see so much of the Mexican culture, interact with the locals, because even when you're in the ride you get to speak to them, hear from their stories and that kind of stuff. And it allowed me to really experience Mexico in a beautiful way. I never would have experienced this location if I didn't hitchhike. So again, this allowed me to travel for free from Merida up to, from Oaxaca up to Merida, so I didn't pay any transportation costs. In Oaxaca we did manage to get a place for free from a local, and then I stayed at this beach, I don't remember the name. We paid not that much money because like the further you go, depending on where you go, because it's not touristy, then you pay less. So it's very in the moment and you have to improvise a lot. And then at the end, when I arrived in Merida, I managed to find a couchsurfing place for 1 week in Merida. So again, I didn't pay much. And Merida, even though it's quite touristy, it wasn't that expensive. So when you pay for food, it's really cheap. Again, I'm really happy I did it because I faced my fear. I got to experience Mexico in such a beautiful way. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend going out and hitchhiking because it's still dangerous. And I didn't post about my journey, nor on this channel, and not that much on Instagram. Because when I did, a lot of people were saying like, oh, be careful, be careful, and I didn't want to contaminate my experience with negative energy, so I really wanted to focus, and I managed to do it in one piece, and I'm really happy I did it. But it was also very exhausting. So it was not only a great adventure, but it was really exhausting because you never know if you will find somebody who will give you a ride, and then you don't know how far you're gonna get because not everybody is going to the same destination. So you might have to like do short journeys and then continue further on. But I'm really happy I did it. It was a beautiful experience, and it really gave me an appreciation not only for life, but also gave me a really boosted confidence, because now every time I'm scared to do something, I can remind myself, no, you hitchhiked in Mexico, so you can do this. So only for that I would recommend, when you travel, do things you fear of, because that way like your comfort zone expands and then you become more confident in your capabilities, but also that you're more detached from outside things. Because like even the first two people I hitchhiked with, they were scared that when they would start traveling they didn't have enough money, And I told them like so many times I didn't have enough money yet, I still managed to travel because I have more ability in my way to figure it out along the way and not so much in the money itself. So when we started the journey, at some point we were at this beach destination, which I forgot, and they found money on the floor and they're like, oh my god, this is so great. So sometimes your courage and your faith to travel has to be bigger than your fear, because like if you look at it, depending on what you want to do and where you want to go, the money will never be enough. But if you really want to find something, you'll find a way, and if you don't, then you'll find excuses. So I hope you enjoyed these budget travel tips. I know that depending on where you're based, the budget travel tips might resonate more with you or not, and depending on your passport, it's the same thing, because depending on which one you have, you will have to ask for visas. If you have any great budget travel tips, please share them below. Also share where you're based, because that way if you're based in the States, Africa, or Asia, then people who also are based in those locations, they can learn from you, and we can all become better learners and then teachers to other people who also want to travel more. Thank you so much for watching. Like this video, share this with your friends who want to travel more often, and also make sure you subscribe to my channel and set an alert so you get an update when I post new content. And I see you in my next video.